Let's see how it works out today. We're going to try and make a whole mouse, a jumping mouse. I actually got the tail for this one. But this was a prototype. I've made a few changes. So we're going to see what happens. And I am going to try and make a suit for him. I meant to save myself a picture, so I may have to do some searches for it. But I'm going to see where everything works out. Unfortunately, I did not have time to cut everything beforehand. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of talk about how making these things works out. I'm not a big fan of cutting out my patterns while on live, but sometimes it's just kind of a case of showing how things get done. I don't know if there are better methods to drawing your patterns on this material, but because this Minky is so fuzzy, even the back of it, I can't get it to hold the soapstone. So what I started doing was I started using a pen, and I just cut along the lines of the pen so I don't have to worry too much about it. But since I've been doing this from the very beginning, I've made plenty of plushes that I've washed, some pillows that I've washed, all kinds of different things, and I've never had any problem where the pen has washed out and or stained anything. But if anybody happens to know of a method that might be better for me, I am more than happy to hear about it. What I'm going to be doing today is basically building an entire plush, but I've also only got an hour. So what may wind up happening is I will do most of it. I thought about just making the suit for this guy since I've already got him made, but I've made a couple changes. So if anybody gets on here and you decide that you are more interested in seeing me figure out the suit, send me a message. If you don't want to watch me cut these out, I will drop that right away. And instead, we will try and make a coraline suit. And then what I will do is make a new plush with the tail and everything off camera or on another day. And we'll put the suit on the mouse. So kind of let me know if you have any thoughts on it. If you've already messaged or thought about messaging, please feel free to message again. I am doing my best to watch the screen, but everything is, it's hard for me to look at the screen and look at what I'm working on at the same time. And some of these are actually pretty small. So like these ears, I decided I want to make the ears even smaller than this. So I've made them smaller here. And they are teeny tiny in comparison to what they already were to begin with. So I'm going to be using all tan. You know what? Maybe I should make a couple of the inside of the ears pink. Either way, I'll work on that here in a minute. I'm going to cut out everything else I've got. Again, if anybody's interested, just let me know. What I'm thinking about doing is going either making this entire mouse within the next hour, maybe hour and a half, I guess is what I have. I'm trying to work on fixing the baby's schedule. So we're going to start working on going to bed sooner, reading books, all that stuff, so we can try and get him on a better schedule so he's not quite as cranky. He's a good kid, but I'm afraid that I am messing up by not getting him to bed sooner. So I'm going to work on that while everybody else is, or we're all working on reading and kind of progressing that. I'm kind of wondering, is there a Coraline book? I'm pretty sure there was. I don't know if it was a graphic novel or not, but I think that'd be a fun thing. I think he liked the cartoon, the animation, the movie. That's the word I'm looking for. And my wife loves it, so maybe we could all read that together with him, and that'd be a lot of fun. So once again, I am working on making a Coraline jumping mouse. But here's the thing. I did not have time to cut everything out. So if instead of watching me cut stuff out, you think it'd be a lot more fun to watch me try and make the suits, I can do that. And if anybody says that in the overall, I will just kind of drop everything right away and we will start working on that plan. But otherwise, when I get done cutting this out, we are going to go directly to sewing this mouse and getting a brand new guy put together. And depending on how much time I have to follow, I will do the same thing for making a suit after. One of the things about this is that I want to do a Weird Wednesday. And for now, I'm kind of starting very simple. I'm going to be starting with this Coraline mouse because I think Coraline kind of bounces between cute and kind of scary stuff. And I think what'll happen is it'll be a lot of fun to, in the future, make horror plushes, like mutants and monsters. I've made a mutant mouse before, and I thought that was a lot of fun, and a lot of people really seem to enjoy that. So I thought it would be fun to have at least one day a week, maybe every couple weeks, where I focus on doing something a little bit more weird and creepy. I've made nightmare monsters before, and I've had a lot of other fun things that I've had ideas for. So we're going to start off with this coraline as an in general idea. I can manage AI summaries. I've actually not been paying attention to. Yeah, him is definitely naked. And that's the thing. Lizard Scribe, which, by the way, hello again. I'm glad you've come back. I really love it when you guys show up more than one time on top of everything else, because it makes me feel like I'm doing something kind of right. But it's a lot of fun to start recognizing faces. So what I was thinking is, since I'm making a new mouse, if watching me make the whole mouse is not super fun, perhaps you would rather watch me try and make the suit, let me know. I will drop this and get directly to doing that. And yes, I know I'm repeating myself, but I know people are going to be coming in and out, and I figured it's always better to give the options so that people can know that, hey, I'm paying enough attention to try and do what you would like to see, try and interact with you. I'm still not figuring out the best methods to doing everything because it's really hard for me to see my screen, but I am definitely doing my best, Scribe. I also saw you in here, Spaz. Thank you so much for coming back by. I have just recently started working on and almost finished your Pinkie Pie. This is going to be your Pinkie Pie bunny. I use this really shiny fabric. I think it's really nice, but it also has that great Pinkie Pie color, that bright kind of fuchsia pink. And I also have, for her, I have this, which was an actual My Little Pony material that I'm going to be using for her collar and hat. And I think it'll look really good. I'm working on this so many different things at one time. I'm trying to remember my speech classes where they would tell you not to repeat yourself over and over again. And today I've already caught myself saying I'm working on several times. It used to aggravate the heck out of me to do, and I had those comfort words just like everybody else. But I also haven't done anything live in forever. So learning how to do that and manage my language is kind of weird. Another funny thing happened the other day. I was saying that I dislike a thing, and it was something like the way that I do something, probably even the way that I talk, use the repeated words. And TikTok decided that I was using hate speech. And I was like, no, that's not correct. All right, so here's the back of the head. I've got my legs separated. And the reason I had them separated is because I wanted to pull tightly onto the body so it brings the legs more forward. I don't mind this pose, but the same thing, I have to stuff it right to keep this pose. So one of the things I wanted to do was try and adjust it so it didn't rely on the stuffing part of it. Got my head. I like to mark the back of my head because the difference between these two is so subtle that sometimes when I'm working from one thing to the other, it's easy to get it confused. And I learned pretty early, especially with the mice. I mean, their heads are so small that it was better to just mark something that was different, because I had to undo so many different heads because I messed them up so many different times. All right, so what I will do is I like to start here. Let me go ahead and double check to make sure of any messages. Remember, if at any point in time you guys are watching, you feel like, you know what, let's go ahead and move on to the suit. Just tell me. Oops, I forgot to switch out my thread. I don't want to use black thread on this. Again, part of the plan, I'm going to be making a suit for a jumping mouse, for a coraline style jumping mouse. I just didn't have time to prep my entire mouse today. Now the relevance is I still want to make sure that I work on it. So it'll either be off camera or over the weekend or maybe on another live, or I will wait a couple weeks until I do my next Weird Wednesday. Because I think what's going to happen is Weird Wednesday is going to be in every other week, because I've already got my Not Pokemon Mondays. And on my Not Pokemon Mondays, I'm pretty much making sure I'm prepared for that every weekend by cutting the material, coming up with a pattern. I've already got the drawings, or making new drawings, depending on what's going on. Because, for example, somebody, she was here just a minute ago. I apologize if I'm utilizing the wrong pronouns. They were here just a minute ago. Spaz Princess has ordered a cute and goofy Spivey. So what I'm going to wind up doing is making a drawing for that, getting approval for it, and I'm going to be trying to make that on this coming Monday. I kept forgetting about it when I was mentioning it last Monday and thinking I was going to be doing like a Gengar or something like that. But I think that it's totally fair and definitely reasonable to work on orders. Speaking of which, I thought I was going to be working on them over the weekend. I have 6 Scherzards that I have started, and they're in a pile just behind the camera's sight. Oops, I got to readjust my workstation here. I'm doing my best to work in a small area because I don't have the opportunity to use I don't have the opportunity to use a computer to watch. So I basically just have to do everything all on my computer screen or on my phone screen, which isn't a bother except for the fact that it is definitely hard to see comments when I am working. And I can't set a chime to it, which is kind of annoying. I can't get it to chime if somebody says something. I've also learned that I can't zoom in and out. Oh, maybe I can. That's as far out as I can go. What is it? Kiguru. Oh, are you talking about Pokemon? I'm going to be honest. As much as I love Pokemon, I'm only just getting back into it. And I've been out since about Gold. But I can guarantee you that just about any of the Pokemon that are out there, I can find a way to make a goofy version of it. Part of the point of doing all that is the idea that people can have fun making a plush without having to take it too seriously. Because I had a lot of people tell me that they were too afraid to start, that they didn't know where to start, and I kind of want to show everybody how. Yes, I do believe I can, Raichu. And basically what I'm saying is I'm very supremely confident that I can. Chip, please stop barking.
Stop, Chip.
Okay, I'm going to do the inside of the ears pink. I think that'll look cuter by just a little bit. And Raichu, just go ahead and message me. I am more than happy to work it. I can do some sketches for it so that you can kind of approve of what I do. That way it's not just me making one and then you saying, oh, I don't actually like that one. I'd rather make it so that the person requesting it actually likes it. And it's kind of important to me to try my best to make you happy. It is only Mondays that I'm doing that for the time being, but I also super love doing it. So there's a very high possibility that I will expand on that at some point. And again, if you are watching and you make a lot of plushes, you do a lot of sewing, and you're wondering why I'm using a pen, it's just because this material, this Minky, is so weird that I can't get soapstone or colored pencils to actually leave their mark on there. So this has been my workaround since the very beginning. I tried that for a long time, several times, trying to get it to stay and show up, to no avail. So if you have any other suggestions, I am all self-taught, and I am definitely open to hearing suggestions and ideas. So I am going to go ahead and pull up a picture of the Coraline mouse on my spare phone, but I also have possible weather coming through. So I'm not sure if power will cut out or not, which will super suck, but there's nothing I can do about that. So let's try. I gotta find the internet on this older phone. I'm not even sure what internet it has. I think there's Chrome on here somewhere. There we go. And in the meantime, I'm going to bounce back and forth between what I am working on here. These ears are very small. So basically one of the things I have to do is this trick that I do with using the previously sewn on piece. I thought about water soluble. I've never really bought one. But you know what? I hadn't thought about it in so long that I had completely forgotten. So I'm going to make sure I send myself a message. Oh, you know what? I'm going to write that down. I forget things so easily. Soluble. I'm sure I spelled that wrong. But I'll use that. Oh no! My paper just fell all the way to the floor. All right, so I'm going to be using the previously sewn on piece. This is a bit bigger, so I was able to actually use that without worrying. But this material is so fluffy, it has so much fuzz that comes off of it, And because there's 2 layers, it makes it real thick. It's really hard to get very small pieces to go through the sewing machine. So what I do is I leave the previously sewed piece on, and I use that as a handle to gently pull and guide the next small piece through. It's something I learned to do while making my tiny mice. These heads are so small that the sides, they just kept getting caught up in the machine. And it took me so long. When I first started doing them, it would take me 4 hours to do a single mouse because of all those little things that I was doing wrong and all these little tricks that I've learned to make it better. And I do have to go a little bit slow because it's such a curved angle on here. There's a flat side and then this whole curve to create the ear. And I've even made it smaller than this. So it's probably about like this size now. I use it all the time, purple cap, and I tried spelling it the best way. You know what? I'm not sure I spelled it right or not. I was not mocking you, I promise. I am horrible at spelling. I think there's a brief period in time in in elementary school when I was convinced that spelling mattered, and I got 1 A and 1 spelling B. And since then, I have learned that I do not care about spelling. As long as I get my point across, I am good to go. So again, I'm going to use the previous piece to kind of guide it through. Once it gets started, it seems like these ears are working really well. But I may have to go back over them because what will happen is like the bottom piece might or might not be stretching or getting caught up just a little bit. So I'm going to have to go back over and double check, which is not the worst thing in the world. Just means I'll have to sew a small section of it a second time. But let's go ahead. So you can see right here, I got the opening side so I can right side it out. And it looks like I got it in there enough where I don't have to worry about resewing this one. When I do the heads on both my mouse and my jumping mouse, and even my bunny, which honestly speaking, I only do a slight difference for my bunny. Where did my bunny head go? There it is. What I try to do is sew a little bit further into the jaw so that the mouse head is a little bit wider and the bunny head is a little bit more angular. But I tend to do those, I'll start from the back when I do the one side, and then I'll start at the nose when I do the opposite side. There's a lot of circumstances where you'll find that doing it the same direction. For example, when I do snakes, I will do it the same direction because I want the material to stretch the same on both sides. But I found that with these heads, if I get the nose started at the right spot, it actually seems to kind of keep it balanced and helps me maintain that shape without either of them stretching. So it's kind of nice to learn that kind of thing. With the bodies, one of the things I like to do is I like to make sure and put a little piece of metal ring inside there, which is hard to see. The camera's catching it just fine, but that's where I like to be able to attach like a key ring to it. And I do that, I'm going to start doing that on my jumping mice as well. I didn't do that here, but I did that on my my final prototype. And what I will do is the same thing that when I make my mice bodies, I will sew the front end and then use that to sew the whole body together. So I'm going to go ahead and at the arch of the back, just above the arch of the back. And the reason I'm not sewing all the way across is because I still have to leave an opening where I can inside it out. So now I'm going to take this little bitty ring. I'm going to slide it right up against the needle. If you are making plushes at home and you're making tiny plushes, you've already got a whole lot of things to kind of figure out. Trying to get the stitch to where you can put something like this in it is really not hard. You just have to remember you want to make your stitches far enough apart. I'm going to show you what I'm referring to. If you look here, this is where the zigzag is. Let me get the camera to focus on it. This is where the zigzag is. Now, stop it. My zigzag. And this is the distance in the stitch. You can see right here, there's more space in it. I work on a 2 because that lets me see, but you could always go wider. And if I make a mistake on 2, I can cut the threads and start over. But also on a 2, I have enough space that I can put the little ring inside. Again, I'm going to use the previously sewn one as a handle to gently guide it through. I can feel it physically bouncing over the ring, and I will go back to make it just a little bit stronger. So, let's see. I love learning new things. Never thought of doing this. Adding the little rings to it? Oh yeah, it's fantastic. Here's something else you may not have considered before too. When you build your, let's say for me, I'm making a small mouse plush, right? I put a little loop of fabric that matches the belly so that you can use it for hair clips, clothespins, all kinds of things. Here, let me show you one of the bellies that has a little bit more of a defined pattern on it. So the loop is literally sewn in. I'm going to go ahead and right side this out. It's going to take me just a moment. I'm not going to worry about, well, I'll go ahead and push the legs out too. The legs are so tiny, sometimes they just don't want to work with you, but it takes a little bit of extra effort. So, okay, got all my legs out. Any second now. Okay, so you can see right here, I used a matching material and it's still in there and it hides it. It leaves your plush completely looking normal, but it gives you such versatility in it. And you could do the same thing like on their backs. You can do it on legs and arms. So if you are making plushes at home, you have that option. Additionally, I also will put the little loop in the arm sometimes so that I can have them holding hands. I can have two plushes do this by connecting those loops in their arms. So a few ideas that might make it a little bit more fun for you on different projects. All right, so this ear was fine. I'm going to right side that out. Actually, yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and right side it out. Yeah, I was making the tiny mice before, and I felt I loved them. I actually modeled them after my son's nickname. And I realized that the amount of time it takes to make them, just people aren't going to find it worth it. I was doing craft shows and I needed to find a way to kind of make them just a little bit more fun, a little bit more versatile. So adding that loop on their back and adding that strap on their stomach was the perfect fix, because then people can actually just carry it around with them all day, and it made a huge difference. And it looks like my second ear is fine. I didn't quite get as much of a curve around here as I wanted, so it sticks out a little bit more, but I think that that's going to be okay. How does your sewing machine not eat those up? I will show you. And literally, that's one of the things that I do because it's so small. I had to figure out little tricks on how to do it. It'll only take me a second here, but I have to get this kind of put in place. So here's how I keep my sewing machine from eating it up. I will leave the previously sewed on piece right here. The thread is still connected. When I go to attach, I'm going to do this real quick because you asked the question, I can answer it quickly. For example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew the front of the jawline, the snout right here. And I'll do the same thing when I do these very small pieces. I will do just a simple back stitch, of course, hold it in place. But then I will use this as a handle. The thread's still on here. I can actually grab a hold of this, gently but firmly pull so that it keeps it from getting caught up. And it makes it so much easier than trying to do it by itself. You just have to make sure you start with the right pieces. For example, starting with the back, it's such a big piece that from now on, I can use the smaller one, the previous small one, to do that as well. And I will show you what I mean. So now I can use this piece to pull the next piece through. It's one of those things that when I was first designing these and figuring this stuff out for myself, it took quite some time to figure out. Now, one of the things about this one is I have on the belly, I have this wedge that I've cut out to kind of give it a little bit of a shape to the belly. As opposed to being flat, this will actually pull it out. I think I'm going to wind up having to make this a little bit deeper, but I won't know until after I put this one together. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew this wedge on before I sew the feet on. And then I'm going to use this wedge to be the handle for the back of my head when I attach the ears. If you ever make a wedge like this, one of the things you want to make sure is that you actually don't stop where you've cut. You want to round it all the way out to the edge of the body, because otherwise you'll wind up with a crease. Instead of a rounded edge, you'll wind up with like a triangle that sticks out instead of a rounded shape. And it makes a big difference in how it looks. What I am going to do, cut this off. All right, so my head is put together. What I like, let's see, I think I like the ears being pretty wide out. So I'm going to put those behind or underneath my seams so they come out right about there. I want them drooping down, and I want the pink forward. So that's how I'm going to pin it in place. It's just going to be a tiny little ear sticking out, and the back of my head is this circle. Oops, I moved it around. I don't have to worry about folding the ear. When I do the mice, I like to fold the ear so it gives it a little extra shape. But with the jumping mouse, it doesn't have that fold, so I don't have to worry about that. But it is one of those things that you can keep in mind whenever you're making your own. If you like that shape, you can always make the ears bigger. You got a whole lot of options. So don't forget that a lot of details can be adapted for how you want your own versions to be. Now, I will be making these patterns available. I can't utilize certain words because then TikTok starts thinking I'm doing something I am not. But you can always message me if you are interested. I am still working on perfecting this pattern. It may be there because this guy looks pretty good. And the one that I finally finished actually does too. Yes, these are all my own patterns. I start off with just some graph paper, and I start making drawings and start over and over and over again. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you this. This is fun for me. I started with this. I'm making a jumping mouse.
No.
Yeah, I will make a Pokemon later, I promise, okay? So I started with this, and I was like, wait, way too small. My thinking was could use the same pattern as the mouse, but I had to kind of adjust it. So I thought adding legs didn't work. So I made it bigger, still didn't like the legs. Then I made a bigger one without the legs to see if maybe I didn't need to change, because I was changing the shape of the arms as well. And I realized that I didn't need to. And then I had a stroke of inspiration. This looks like a little raw chicken, but this is how I did one leg one way and then the other leg. So a lot of failure, and then that led me to the changes to make this guy. It seems like quite a jump, but this material makes a difference too. And I did some adjustment between the two of these. But literally I went from here to here. And that's making my own patterns. Let's see, where am I at? I am about to sew my first ear on. I've got to do them one at a time because of the shape of the head. I don't want to have to worry about trying to fit a whole bunch of pins in there. And again, using this as a handle, I will gently pull. If you pull too hard, you'll snap your thread. If you pull just under too hard, you'll cause your stitch to spread out. And instead of having close stitches, you'll wind up with one that's spread like this from where you pulled it. I'm using this as an example because I don't really have the ability to show that without messing up. And even if I had the ability, I'm not using the right thread for you to see it. And right now I'm sewing through several pieces of material because I've got both sides of the ear, the pink and the white side, plus at the seams, it's folded over material. So it's basically going to be 6 pieces of fabric that I'm trying to sew through it when it comes to certain points of it. Trying to line up the back of my head. I do want to keep this curve as I'm going, so I'm going to do it really slowly. Trying to stop the needle on the down so I don't have to worry about accidentally pulling it out. Just a couple stitches. Now, if I pin this in place, it's definitely easier. But if I put too many pins in there, they just block each other. So the reason I'm doing this so slowly instead of pinning it is because I want to get to the next seam at the top of the head so that when I tuck the ear in, I don't have to use as many pins. I won't have to pin this side because I've already sewn it closed. I know that probably makes very little sense. I I know that a lot of what I'm saying has to do with my experiences. So what happens is if I say it out loud and you decide to make something of your own, something I say might register and be like, oh, he did this, and then maybe I can try something as well. So right here, I've also got that little wedge that I sewed together. I've rounded it out so it doesn't look, honestly, if right here, it would look like a crotch, and that's not what I want at all. So it's something to keep in mind. Now what I'm going to start doing, though, is I'm going to start working on attaching the legs. I have brought this in a little bit so that it's not quite as wide. My hope is that it'll pull the leg in and cause this to turn in and curve more towards the front. I rarely pin anything. Truth be told, I do the same thing. I have to do it with the small pieces because this ear does not want to stay in place. And as soon as I start sewing, it just snaps right out of place. But if you ever watch me work, there's a lot of things that as I get bigger that I just don't pin in place. And here, the reason I have to do it is because it's opposite rounded shapes because I want them to be folded in. And it's funny to say it and then be like, oh, here's the 18 things that I'm pinning in place. But I promise I get the wildness of it. It's fun to be able to just kind of throw it in there. And there's a lot of things like the mouse ears that I wouldn't use a pin on, not only because they're small, but because I know how that shape fits. And I don't have to worry about it. I can go rogue when I want to. And if you ever wind up watching, you might see that I have started pinning more and more. But part of that is because a lot of what I'm doing here is super small or trying to teach. I learned all this on my own. There's so many things that I've learned the hard way that if I can teach someone how to do it the easy way, I feel like it's a real attempt at teaching something. I remember having teachers that were telling me, well, if I tell you how to do it, then you won't learn. It's like, no, that's not true. If I tell you how to do it and then you find another way to do it or you figure it out for yourself, you just have less mistakes that you have to make in your learning process. Besides, at the time, I was teaching people how to pay me. And the idea of them thinking that they didn't have to teach me made me so very angry. Now, again, this one's going to be pinned because I want this ear to be as close to the same as the other one. So I'm kind of pinning it in place for that and kind of because it's so small. But I don't have to pin the back because, again, ow, I just stabbed myself. I've already sewn all the way up to it. Okay, let's get this head on here. One of the cool things about working with the small pieces is I've learned a lot about how to prevent myself from having to hand stitch everything. Once upon a time, I used to attach the ears. So it's the head, the ears, the body. I attached the arms or I would attach the legs. And I learned at some point in time that I really don't want to have to do any more hand stitching than I have to. Not only do I feel like it's stronger to machine sew it, but I also feel like it saves time if I can just run it through the machine. Comments live were filtered to protect community experience. Okay, that means I probably got a few people that are trying to say that they are going to give away free stuff. I've always had these messages that were people. It was like the next 10 people to comment, I'm going to be blessing. And I was like, don't do that. It's a scam. So I'm glad that it seems like the system's doing that for me. All right, my head is pretty much sewn up. I'm going to go ahead and attach my last leg. This is taking a lot less time than I was afraid it would take. Again, if at any point in time someone's like, you know what, I would rather watch you try and make the suit. So if you think you're not going to have time, go ahead and do the suit. I will drop this right away and we will start sewing a suit onto this little naked guy. I even had the red material already out here. This is just a scrap of it. I have like a whole handful of the material. And we're going to make it the coraline, what is it? What would we call that? Bellboy suit? Circus suit? I know it was the Bobinski circus, but I'm pretty sure that the outfits they were wearing were more like a bellboy, a bellhop. Which would make sense. Hop, jumping mouse. Haha. It's probably very clear to everybody but me until I just said it out loud. Okay. Again, each time keeping the last sewn one on there so I don't have to worry about if I can use it as a handle or not. And see where our head looks. Yeah. Oh no. No, I put the ear on backwards. Oh, what a waste of time. Well, let me make sure I get the right one. I'm going to take this one off. Unless someone interrupts and says that they want this mouse with that backwards ear. Shouldn't take too long. Again, this is the reason why I do another reason why I do a wider stitches. I can actually see them. I can't show you because they're white on white, but I can definitely see them a little bit better. I should probably have my magnifying light out here. Just got to get just enough so I can peel the ear out. It's so small that I shouldn't have to go too far. I just have to make sure I don't accidentally cut the material itself. And then I can just sew this one part in. There we go. And then I'll just cut off the strays later. What'll happen is I'll probably find them as when I finish and I right side it out. All right, let's not do that again. Okay, this is the top of my head. It looks to me like I may have put the ear on the wrong side to begin with. So it's not going to have as much of a droop as I want, but the other ear kind of messed that up anyways because I made it a little bit too small. So that should be okay. And now I shouldn't have to pin it, so that'll be helpful. Get my light back in place. I'm not even sure. I don't want to embarrass myself. But, okay, pink up. There we go. Good. Again, with the idea that I don't like to pin if I don't have to, so here I am not pinning. And now I won't be able to tell if I did that right until I cut that piece off. Always keeping the previous one on so I can use it as a handle. And now we get to see, this is another spot that I pin. The reason I pin this is, if you look, I keep the back side open. And the reason I do that is because when you wind up sewing the two pieces together, my pattern is not so 100%, but that's funny. Well, I'm glad I didn't try and guess what it meant. Because my pattern is not so 100% perfect that I can guarantee that the butt will always be at the same place, what I do is I start at the sewn on part, start with the legs, pin them in place. Again, every time I say that now, I'm going to be like, oh, I do pin because I have to. I'll pin the legs. And this is how I put my mice together. I have these all in place so that I know that they are lined up, because the belly and the front are completely separated. So I'm trying to do it on camera so you can see. And I also try and keep in mind that when I pin these, the direction that I'm going to be sewing, so that I don't get the ball in the wrong place in the way. You can see how they are all running so that I can sew this way and just pull them out as I go. Get this leg pinned. And I will show you how I start this. I've got the center line where I did that wedge right here. Didn't mean to make you self-conscious about pinning. No, it's just funny. I fully agree with it, but now that I'm doing it, I'm like, ha ha, you're an idiot. You pin all the time. So you definitely didn't. It's just a funny little moment now that I'm thinking about it. All right, so my center of my back side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as my starting point, sewing along the legs the whole way. And this is where I'm going to end as well. I'm going to sew all the way along the belly side. I've got the head so that it's a solid piece, because that's going to be centered as well between the two arms. Just have to make sure I keep the ball at the top here. And what'll happen is when I get to the back side of it, I will wind up sewing and it'll line up and even out the pattern. So now I don't have to worry that if I sew the butt side of it, that I sewed too far or didn't sew enough. And this helps me line everything up it gives me that little bit of a grace for when I sew, that I don't have to worry about everything being 100% perfect. Between my cutting it, between the material stretching, I have a lot more leeway now because I've given myself this extra room to kind of work with. I do have to make sure I get everything out of my way so I don't get tangled up. This one I'm going to change, and the reason I do that is because I have to make sure it does not interfere with my starting the needle. All right, so my leg is lined up. I'm going to line it up again with that center wedge right here, which it's hard to tell, but that's where I'm going to line it up. The back side on this is just laid out flat, and the other one is just out of the way. This is the same method that I use when I sew my mice. And again, I'm going to use the previously sewn one as a handle, especially since I'm having to sew over that seam, that wedge. Now the good news is at this size, I don't have to worry too much about the handle itself. Let me see what's going to happen. I'm going to take this off. I'm a little less experienced with the jumping mice, so there's a lot of changes between this and the mice that I usually make. Let me go ahead and adjust the camera here. Try and do this without blocking my own view. And I think that's good. I think I can still see. I will tell you this. I have had a couple people comment on this before that I don't use a zigzag. These are so small that I don't have the space to do a zigzag. What winds up happening is it goes off one side and will not come back on. I can reinforce this by going back afterwards and adding a zigzag. I don't do it very often. Sometimes what will happen is the material that I use on the inside is maybe silky or frays very easily, and then I will go back and redo it. But just to show you how strong this is, I've made plushes and pillows for years. I made my wife a star pillow, and I used this exact same stitch. And what happened is we washed it several times and the material wore out before the stitch did. So I can assure you that just running a straight line like this is strong enough. But if you decide that you want to make yours extra strong, going back over with a zigzag stitch on the outside of it is a very good idea, and it's definitely helpful. I just don't think it's necessary to begin with. Now, if I were to be making this so that it can be worn, the original plan was to make one that I'm going to put a suit on. But if I were making it to be worn, right here across this belly is where I would put a piece of fabric so that it stretches out on this edge of the seam and then goes back through. And that's how I make the strip on the belly like this. And the reason I do that is so that you can wear it as a clip or a hair tie or even attach it to your pin, like if you decide you want it on the back of your pencil while you're working during the course of the day. And it gives you a lot of versatility on where you can take your mouse buddy with you. This is going to have a suit, so I am not worried about adding that loop to it right now. But if you did not, if you were just making one like this, that would be where his belly would go. Now, somebody mentioned earlier, how do I do this without the machine eating this material? One of the things that happens is it's so fluffy that it gets caught up when I turn it. So I will have to dig that out sometimes. And now that that's through, I can take the pin out. The pins just start getting in the way again. It's so small. There's so many things already in the way. You just have to start removing obstacles as you go. Now, sometimes it will still get caught up. even though I've used another pin to shift it and bring it out, it might get caught up when you're taking the legs in. And if that happens, you might just have to do some back stitching, start a new stitch. There's a lot of little tricks. And if that happens, I'll show you, but I'm really hoping it doesn't. I don't mind teaching, but I don't want mistakes to happen because I'm not really excited about trying to fix my own mistakes either. I'm just happy that the ear that I had to fix wound up being a real quick fix. Another thing is when you're doing like something as small as these arms, you might find that perhaps the bottom layer or even the top layer shifts. And maybe you only stitch at the top layer. And when you go back through, I will show you how I do this. You might just have to go back and redo some stitches to close it up. Let's see, I'm getting ready. I have crossed over onto the second side, so I just have to make sure that that stays flat so that I don't accidentally sew like a fold or any of the other parts in the wrong area. So what I do is lay it down. See, you can see that the second piece is now pulled over on the other side. Working this small, you either kind of adapt or you just get so aggravated that you might give up. So I'm doing my best to show you all these little tricks that I've learned, because if you haven't noticed, the mice that I did first, way smaller than what I'm doing right now. So I've learned to do super small so that I can do small with a little bit more ease. And we are coming across to the waist now. My hope is that I've got this set up so that the inside legs or the bottom legs will actually bend forward a little bit more. I did a little bit more adjusting. I will go slow at times. For example, I've got this knee that I'm sewing here. And anytime that I go to adjust it, as opposed to just kind of running through super fast, going slow keeps me from having to worry about accidentally causing a few misfires. But when you do, make sure that you stop with your needle down. If you stop with your needle up, you are going to wind up accidentally moving the whole thing and just having this long thread. Everything's going to get in your way. You're going to get super aggravated. But this way, at the very least, it stops where you are. It's a little helpful tip. One of those things that took me more than a few mistakes to learn. And if I can keep you from making the same mistakes I did, then that is fantastic. I got a lot of fuzz in the air. I can see it sticking in my face and tickling my nose. Again, I'm going super slow. I've got such a small amount of material here that if I go too fast, it might just wedge up in there. I think that there's a possibility my bottom foot is already kind of shifted in a way that I'm going to have to restitch it. It looks like I've got so much extra over here, but I won't know until I'm done. And if that is the case, I will unstitch, seam rip, all that stuff, and just come back and fix it. I'm hoping I won't have to, but I'm preparing for the possibility. And part of that is because the material stretching, and part of it might be because I haven't perfected the pattern. So there's a chance that it's off because I haven't drawn it wide enough. Now I got to get over a few seams here, and I'm going to stop right on the center wedge again. Here in a minute, what I will do is when I take that off, I will show you how I find out if I miss some seams, especially on something small. It's easy to see on something bigger. Have you used tissue paper to stop it from getting stuck? I have. So I've used tissue paper and I've used like the embroidery stuff. The thing is, I am also working on trying to do this as cheaply as possible. If I have to buy a whole bunch more tissue, it's like one-time use. And I just can't abide by the idea of wasting that much tissue to do it. It is a very good idea. And if you're only doing one or two, especially if you're doing embroidery, I still suggest it. When I do embroidered pieces, anything embroidered, I try to do that material behind it. But for the time being, there are things that just kind of occasionally happen. And you can see here, my ears are tiny, but I think that they will still work. And then I double check to make sure all my seams are good by pressing at the seam using my chopstick, especially since I had to re-sew one of those ears on. And it looks like I'm good. I will do a tiny bit of hand embroidery for the nose, so I can give him, I just dropped my original. So I can give him just a teeny little nose. I think that'll make it a little bit cute. So, all right, using this as a handle, where am I at? I need to figure out my next step is the tail. I haven't cut this yet. I started everything as quickly as I could. I don't need my pins anymore. And if you hadn't noticed, just what I've done so far from cutting onto this has been about an hour. Use napkins or whatever. You know, that's not a bad idea at all. Using napkins and stuff, anything that will tear away afterwards is a pretty good idea. All right, so let's try and figure out my tail length. What I have done so far is, for the first tail that I made, I took this piece of wire and I shaped it. Now this is fencing wire. I had this for an art project from years ago. Yeah, I use wax paper for cooking. Yeah, honestly, anything that's delicate enough that the needle can go through and tear away after you've sewn it is a great idea. And whenever you're kind of working on a project at home, if you don't want to go buy some new stuff to do it, keep that in mind. You're very right, Paint Piglet. That is fantastic ideas. And I will have to keep that in mind too, because there are times when I just don't want to use, or there are times when I need to do something to figure it out. And that's going to be a good idea. And I'll have to keep that stored away in the back of my mind. So what I'm going to do is about 8 inches. It's probably going to be too long, but I think 8 inches is a good length. Go ahead and line this up with my table. Then I can do a straight line here. I'm going to do 8 inches. And I'm going to do this at about 1 inch. I kind of think that's too big, but last time when I did it, it was very hard to get the material out. So we're going to find out one way or another. So another 8 inches at 1 inch. Just going to do a little quick double check. Yeah, that's close enough where I don't have to worry about it. So the idea of the tail is a little bit simpler than most other parts. I'm just going to sew one end to the other. And then I'm going to round out the edge so that I get the tip of the tail. So I guess I shouldn't say sew one end together. I'm going to sew one side to the other. And then round out the tip. One thing I have to keep in mind is the direction of the fuzz. And I will show you what I mean here in just a moment. On this material, I believe it's called the pile, the thickness of the fuzz, it actually has a direction to it. And the relevance to that is I like to make the pile go the same direction I imagine petting them. So on the head, I've got it going back. On the body, I've got it going down its back. On the tail, my intention will be so that you can stroke along the tail. So I want to make sure that I have it facing out so that the fuzz goes up. And what I will do now is, I'm hoping that this is big enough. This is going to be really hard to tell. I think that I can do a zigzag stitch on this to get it a little bit closer to the edge. I'm not 100% sure, but we're going to find out. I'm going to rearrange my camera again. And make sure I'm doing this the right way. Okay. So what I'm going to do is sew from this side out. I really don't know if I can get this to do what I want it to do. So the reason I'm thinking about doing a zigzag here is because I'm trying to do as much space as I can. But if I can get it to work without zigzagging, that might just be so much better for me. Again, this is something new. So what's happening here is I'm learning how I want this to work at the same time. This is super thin, but it doesn't have the same curves. As you can see by zigzagging here, well, maybe you can see. Let me try and adjust a little bit more. What's happening is I've got one stitch going over and one stitch out of the material. And the relevance to that is that's meant to be a strong, it keeps the material from fraying. But for me right here, it's allowing me to sew super close to the edge on this straight line so I can use as little material. And the relevance to that is on this tail, I have to inside it out. I can't really cut too close to the thread because then it will just come undone. And I don't want to hand stitch the whole thing. I could make it the right size if I hand stitched it and instead ran it all the way across. Let me go ahead and get rid of my zigzag. Now I'm going to round out that side. I think I'm going to find a better method of doing that at some point in time. But this is, again, just a learning process. I should not have cut that off, but that's okay. But you can see that I've got it sewn together, and I've got the zigzag should make it a little bit more sturdy. This is going to be a part that does get moved around a lot, so I have to keep that in mind when I'm kind of making this. Now I get to see how I can get it to inside out. The last one was really hard, and I think that I made it just a little bit thicker last time, so this may be impossible, and I may have to just cut a new tail. I'll go ahead and zoom out just a little here. So this tiny little sleeve, I've seen people using pins to fix this, like safety pins. But what I'm trying to avoid doing is the extra work. And what's going to be funny is I'm going to give myself all this extra work by trying to avoid extra work. And I'm just not sure what's going to work or not. So let's try and do it close to the end. This is the thinnest tail I've tried to make before. On my rats, I've got a tail that's very similar to this, but it is bigger. Same with my possums. So I think that what's going to happen here is I'm going to get caught up and it's not going to feed all the way through, but we'll see. I might be mistaken. One of those little steps that it's good to learn, but not a whole lot of fun. Now the problem is that at some point in time it might bind up and not feed through anymore. Just like writing out a sock. Right-siding out a sock from the dryer. But I'm not sure if this width is going to work with me. I can already feel it kind of catching. So let's try one more time on this end. Go a little bit further in. If I can get it started on this side, I know I can force it through. I've done that more than a few times on some tiny little things. There was a point in time when I was making a bunch of masks for people during COVID. I knew that there were a lot of people that needed masks, and I had just started learning how to sew. So I started making masks and using fabric for the tie-on. And this is what I had to do at that time too. And that was about as thin as this. Maybe a little bit thicker, but definitely with a thinner material. Let's see. I can get this through. I think that I've got enough of it in there. It's like it really does not want to work with me though. There is a knot at the end of it because of the way it's sewn. And that might be what's kind of keeping it right now. Ah, there we go. I got it in. Oops, I gotta fix this puzzle piece. There we go. Fantastic. And then the rest of it can come right out. Feed that back in and just kind of make sure that I got as much of it out as I could. Excellent. And here's my tiny little tail. Insert this. Excellent. Now I rounded out the bottom so that that will keep it from coming out, but I'm going to try and sew this into the back with the metal piece in. So I'm going to have a little bit more space here. That way it really secures it. But I'm also wondering, I think what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and sew the end around the metal part. And the reason for that is because I don't want the metal part to come off on the inside of the plush. I'm afraid that if I don't, well, here, give me 1 second. Let me thread my needle and I'll show you exactly what I'm worried about happening. I'm here. There we go. I should have made that bigger. I'm going to have to use multiple pieces anyways. Okay, so if I just sewed this in like this, what will wind up happening is someone will move the tail and it'll start coming in. Granted, the belly side of this will eventually stop it, but it'll also leave all this empty fabric in the end, and I just don't want that to happen. So my intention is I'm going to bring this up just a little bit, and I'm going to sew through my piece of metal. I don't have to worry about this being super pretty. I just have to worry about it being strong and functional. So I'm going to sew this so that it goes through the metal. And then I will sew the whole thing into the back, making sure that I keep a wide enough stitch that I don't wind up breaking my needle trying to get this to work. I'm not even sure how much of this needs to be sewn in. I'm just going to kind of loosely do it. It seems really ridiculous, I guess. It's probably not something that most people would even worry about. But I don't know what people would expect as far as details go. And I expect to do everything I can to make these things last as long as I can make them. So all these little steps that might seem pointless, I won't know until I've tried them a few times and just kind of run with the ideas. And if anybody has any other thoughts on it, I'm more than open to hear that. Hey, Cat B. So we're making a plush jumping mouse. And the intention is, depending on time and the storms, is I'm going to be making the outfit for it too. What you missed is I pretty much put the whole thing together. And now I am sewing the metal piece into the tail so that it doesn't shift and come loose on me. And then I will sew that tail into the back of our mouse. I'm glad you made it. I'm starting to see more names that I recognize, which is fantastic for me. It makes me feel happy in my heart. And I'm doing my best to do good at remembering them too. What happens though, more often than not, is I will remember a conversation or I will remember the icon because I'm really good with faces before I remember names. Thank you so much. I'm hoping that this will be the final version. I've made a couple adjustments. We've changed the shape of the ear a little bit. I'm doing a few details for the tail different and the body itself so that hopefully it has a different pose. And we are at the point where I am just going to try and sew this tail in and hopefully not break my sewing machine or my needle. It seems very likely that I should not do it this way, but we are going to find out, and I'm going to do it very slow. Now, before I mentioned that what I will do is sew to the start at the back, sew around the body, and then sew the back side again with the tail in it. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot that I have to check the feet here. I had mentioned earlier, yeah, I can see completely. It's almost completely off. And the reason for that is because there's so much over here that was excess. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick. It's so funny to try and learn something new and realize all these simple mistakes that I'm going to be making as I learn. So what may wind up happening is I may wind up having to make the feet just a little bit wider so that I can see them when I sew it and try and help them stop from coming uneven. Because it looks like from all the way from here, all the way around, you can see there's an entire fraction of an inch, and that's caused the whole thing to shift off. So basically, the next step might be making the legs a little bit wider and just sewing them in more. I could always trim it back if I need to. It's one of the things that I already do with the mice is I trim off the ends that I don't need after it's been put together. I've already had to make a couple repairs, like fixing the ears. So this isn't too bad. Now what I'll do is I will line this up a little bit better to make sure that it doesn't do the same thing. We'll try and make sure. I am not good enough to be able to guarantee that it won't happen again. Whoops, I trimmed my thread too close. If you trim your thread too close to the needle when you start sewing, it'll pull it tight and pull it loose. And that is exactly what just happened. I can hear some thunder and lightning outside. Well, I hear thunder. I'm sure I could see lightning if I looked. So there is a chance that I will have to cut short. But I am trying to do my Weird Wednesdays, even if I only do them every other week, because I don't know how much time I will have to do a new pattern each time. But I really wanted to get that started. So a Weird Wednesday with Coraline seemed like a nice, fun little start. Just have to do all my adjusting here. I'm not sure if that light was in the way for all that or not. Again, what I'm doing now is I sewed the feet already once, but because one side shifted, it didn't actually sew them together. Part of the foot was completely unstitched. And it does look like it'll be better served if I go ahead and make the feet just a little bit wider. I could always sew it more tight and just have that excess. And it might make it overall easier. The legs are bigger, but the feet are much smaller than my mice. At least I feel like they are. Maybe it's just in comparison. So now let's see if that worked out. See, I had it from here all the way to here was unstitched. And it looks like I got it all stitched up nice and tight there. Double check all my other arms. Yep, spot here. See, you can see it just shifted just a little bit. Fortunately, I don't have to unstitch for that one. I may have to unstitch for the other leg instead of the arm. I think I just ran out of thread in my spindle. I did. So if anybody's curious, I don't know how many sewing machines have it set up this way. Mine is a little bit older. But this is how I re-spool my spindles. This is relevant because I had to teach myself all these different things. And if I'm showing somebody what I learned, maybe it'll save them some time. And on top of that, it might be very similar process with anybody else's sewing machine. All right, so put the thread in. There's a hole in the top of my spindle. You look over here. Oops. I just loop it around. There's instructions right there at the top, right here. There at the top to show you how to thread it. I will hold my little bit of thread up. When I pull over, it disengages the needle and engages this, and then just press the pedal. Once it's gone up and down enough to hold it in place, I will cut this loose. I know that some people will tuck that in and continue, but for me, I just like to just cut it loose so I don't have to worry. I hold it in place so it doesn't bounce. And when it is done, it will actually stop itself. So I just hold the pedal down all the way, and it'll start to push up against this piece right here and stop. It automatically stops on its own. I have had it get caught up in there a couple times, so you do want to watch it. You don't want to just blindly do it. And then I will rethread my needle. Make sure it's at the top. Again, it took me a long time to learn a lot of these little things, and doing them helped out a lot. I do learn better by doing, but at the same time, having someone kind of show you the process specifically is a little bit helpful too. All right, get my spindle back in here. Where did I put it? I just took it. There it is. If you ever wind up in a situation where everything's locking up on you, perhaps your needle won't keep moving, after a while, you will need to grease up your sewing machine, and you can buy specific grease for this, but a lot of this equipment, just blow it out, and you'll see a lot of fuzz come out, and these parts will come out as well. So if you have to clean that, there's a lot of extra steps. Now for mine, I know it's different than what yours might be, but again, the idea is to kind of show you the basics to see if it helps. All right, let's get back to seeing what I need to sew up. I think I was just about to fix this arm. Did I fix it already? It may have. Let's see if the legs are okay. This leg, yep, you can see right there, a little bit of it's coming out. I can hear the thunder. I may wind up having to cut short because of that, especially if my power goes out. I live a little bit in the country, so power going out doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen often enough during storms. Always try to back stitch just to make sure it holds it in place. I think I'm a little bit too close here. A little too close. And then in a minute, I'll readjust again anyways, because then I will be trying to put the rest of it together. Check my stitch again. So one of the things about this is if you don't check your stitches, you'll just find out later that you need to fix it. And a lot of times you can just hand stitch it. And that's a real easy fix. But if you don't have to, and you check it and you find it early enough, I mean, it just saves you that little bit of time. I could probably unstitch right here, like I did on the previous leg, break the seams right here. But I think that this is long enough in it where I can just go ahead and sew right there and be just fine. I wouldn't call it cutting corners, but definitely would call it making it easier on myself. As long as it actually makes it easier on myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that little bit of thread to kind of guide it through. Just the same as I would use the handle, what I was talking about previously, when I use whatever I've sewn on already. And I'm just pulling the thread itself. All it does is give it just enough pressure to help feed the leg through. It's so small that there's so many things that just get caught up. And you'll see that there's a lot of excess material here. If I am good, if I've got the stitch on there well enough, I don't have to worry about that, and I'm going to wind up cutting that off anyway. So that's good. That's good. It looks like I've got everything sewn in place now. And now I'm down to the tail, which I am a little paranoid about. It's such a thick piece of wire that I want to make sure that I don't sew too fast. So I have to kind of do some adjusting to make sure that I can get everything through. Got this coming out the back. It's such a big tail. I just want to make sure that it holds the material in place. And what I may wind up doing in the future is sewing the tail in and then putting the metal in, which is technically the smarter way to go, because then I could just leave the tail. If it wasn't so solid, I wouldn't have to worry about bending the wire for it. But if I can avoid having to, what will also happen is that thread that I'm going to be using now will assist keeping the tail in place. And it looks like sewing it in place is just going to be part of my problem. So I'm going to pull this out a little bit. I will learn from that mistake. A little bit of back stitch. Now it is so thick because of everything that I've done here that I'm going to have to do some real work to get it to fit. That bend is also causing a problem. I got this loop here, and that is actually going to cause the metal to be up a little bit higher. I think what I'm going to have to do is just adjust accordingly. I'm going to go ahead and lay that flat. Hopefully it doesn't undo some of the work that I've already done. So at the very least, I can feed it through without it lifting the metal. Turn it this way. This is only the third jumping mouse I've made, technically, because I've got the prototype. I've got the finished one, which I have in the other room, and then this one. And the thing is that there's still some learning that has to be done, which now you guys can kind of see my learning process, which is a lot of failure and a lot of adjusting. I'm going to do individual stitches now. Up and then move, up and then move. And what will happen is I'm going to have a slightly wider stitch, but I will also be able to go right over that piece of metal without having to worry about catching it again. See, I can use the tail itself to guide it through. Back stitch just a little bit. And with luck, that's going to be all I need. So now my hope is that the sewing machine caught just enough of the tail to solidify it in there, went over the metal, and sewed all the way to the end. I'm going to go ahead, you know what, before I do, I'm going to trim off some of this excess thread. That's more of a me thing. It doesn't really need to be done because you're just going to be tucking it in anyways. But now I can take my chopstick and make sure that I didn't skip any stitches. I don't have any holes. Looks like that's good. Good up to here. And I'll just hand stitch this when I close it all up. All right, so that looks like it's good. I'm going to bend my loop again because that's going to keep it from pulling out. Since I imagine people are going to be holding it by the tail a lot, I wanted to make sure it was a little bit stronger. Go ahead and pull the whole thing through. Let me get my sewing machine out of the way now that I'm done with that. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear the thunder. Sounds like a song. And then, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Thunder. Get everything pushed out and through. Thunder. Yeah. Okay, so here's something that I did forget to do. Again, a lot of this is because Chip. Sorry about that. He is Mandy. My wife has described him as a Velcro dog. He's part Chihuahua, part Dachshund. Sorry, Chewini. So that means that when he barks, it's super yippy. I don't count it as failure. It's learning curve. I can't tell you how excited I get with each mouse. Thank you so much. I actually appreciate that. I don't mind using the word failure because to me, it kind of connotes for certain detail to it. But at the same time, I know that some people would have a problem with that concept. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm trimming super close to my stitch. And the reason for that is that excess material is just going to cause a big knot, cause it to have trouble feeding through, and I don't need it. If you were making something bigger, I would never cut off this excess because I don't want the stitch to be too close to the edge. But at this size, it's just seemed to be pretty prudent for everything I've worked on. So let's go ahead and try that again. Let's bring these legs back through. I've learned a lot through the learning curve, the mistakes that I've made. I'm one of those people that doesn't mind making mistakes to learn. And I know there are a lot of people that think you have to do something perfect on the first try. I'm just not that kind of guy. So the use of the word failure can be kind of awkward for some people. But for me, it feels like a good term for the learning. I just got to get the foot out. Come on. It's so small. I already knew that it was going to be hard to get through. Not as hard as the tail was, but still a little bit difficult. Now, one of the things that will happen is, depending on the size of my feet, for example, these small feet right here, when I cut that off, I don't have as much to worry about. There's not a knot in there, and I can still feel it. But it seems to me that I may not have cut quite as much off of this foot. And the relevance to that is that when I inside it out, there's now a knot on this side. It's just that material that is left over. Now, if you ever have something like that happen, you can literally just take a hammer or something else and just pound it down. And it'll cause that material to shift and fold the way you want it to, and it gets rid of that knot. You can still feel it's thick, but it's no longer a knot. So that's something worth keeping in mind when you're working with stuff, so that you don't have to worry about, oh man, I don't like the way that feels. I can when I pet my plush, it's just a hard spot. Well, now you know that you can just kind of hammer it down a little bit, and that'll loosen it up, and that might fix your whole problem right there. All right, get my second leg out. Again, it's a combination of this curve and the thickness of what I'm working with, how small it is, that it's making it harder to feed through than the mouse legs were. And I did a mouse leg a little earlier, so you can see, if you remember or if you saw that, you know, it's not difficult. It's just way easier than this has been. So again, just little bits at a time. There's a possibility I've got too much material down here that I'll have to trim off as well. And in fact, let me go ahead and try that real quick. I think my son was panicking for nothing. I looked, but I couldn't see anything special happening. I'm doing my best to do both of those at the same time. See, I've got all this extra material here. I'm just going to trim this down. Again, that's something I wouldn't do if I was doing a bigger plush, but trying to feed these legs through sometimes proves that little things like that just need to come out of the way. So let's try that one more time, see what the leg does. Got to get to the right side of it. There we go. Yep, got my small end. Sorry, I'm trying to talk at the same time, but I'm also like super focused on what I'm doing. So I kind of phase in and out of my conversation, I guess. Acknowledging it doesn't help, doesn't change the fact that I'm doing that. Ooh, my hand's actually getting tired. It is. It's literally feels like slowly giving birth to a little mouse. Come on, leg. And apparently he's in breach because the legs are not coming out like they need to. All right, let's try and see if I can maybe make this whole work separately. These are things that I don't really want to make the legs bigger, but I may wind up having to just to get this part to work. But there is always the chance that what has happened is it is folded, and that's why it's not coming through. I mean, it's such a small, I mean, that's how big the hole is. That is the maximum amount. And that's roughly the same here, but this one's just kind of being a little bit more troublesome. And that may have helped. Yep, there we go. Excellent. Now it does look like this has a little bit less curve, and that's probably because I trimmed it a little bit differently. It also could be that the way it was sewn was just a little bit different. But I think it'll be fine. I think it still has enough curve to be okay. Get the arms out now. Those will be super easy in comparison, especially since they're even bigger than the regular mouse arms. There we go. And it looks like the legs are already more forward. I know this looks like it's really forward, but part of it's because I overstuffed the knees so that it would kind of bind in. So my hope is that I'm not relying on that. I don't mind still doing that, but my hope is that the genuine shape of my plush now has the knees a little bit more forward. I'm going to go ahead and clean some of this out of the way. Let's do some quick hand stitch for the nose. Now, if anybody's ever seen any of the plushes that I've made before, I did not always do noses on my mice. And then one day, I think someone may have requested it. They said, hey, can you give it a nose? And I was like, no, I can't. And right in the middle of the sentence, I probably came up with the idea of hand stitching it. And then it took me like a month of trying just to get it to look anywhere near how I wanted. Now I get nice little triangle noses. And I would love to eventually make it so that I can have heart or star-shaped noses. But my skill set for embroidery is not there yet, I assure you. But it will be a lot of fun if I can get to that point. So what I'll do is I double up my thread. Instead of just being one strand folded in half, I now have one strand folded twice and then cut open. Make sure that it goes even into the whole thing. Quick knot. Let me go ahead and get that again. If you look back on my TikToks, you'll see that I had several posts talking about nothing but trying to figure that out. And I had all these different shapes and all these different ideas and all these different mistakes until I finally found a way that I felt like worked really well. Now I can try and do that while keeping on the camera. So let's go ahead and shift here. So again, I've got 4 strands of thread. What I will actually do is start off by outlining it. I will do the top side, bottom middle, and then come back out the other side, doing my best to keep it even by keeping it as close to the stitch as I can. Now, because this is fuzzy, I actually put my thumb on here to hold it down, because otherwise the fuzz gets in the way and gets caught up on it. And I did not pull it very even there, so I've got to find which ones did not. And to find that, I just kind of pull the loop that stayed high, and it'll pull my thread for me. I don't want to pull it too tight because I still have to be able to find it later. And that fuzz tries to hide it from me. There we go. I do need it tighter than that, so let's go ahead and pull. Now I will go back across to the other side, come back out the bottom again. Again, trying to make sure that I keep the fuzz down for each one of these stitches in particular. And once more across. I'm not even sure how much of this you can see. Trying to describe it verbally at the same time, but I don't know how much of it comes through. So now I've got a triangle of stitches. You can see here, once I get that fuzz out of the way, what I learned to do was to tuck underneath those stitches. And instead of sewing into the fabric with each one, I use those to add to the shape. Just have to get underneath it all and try not to catch any fuzz as well. And you can see that this one's got more of a V shape to it. Oh, it's a little hard to tell. Let me see maybe if I turn this light down just a little bit. No, not the color. So I've got this V shape in there. I can add to the bottom stitches. I'm like trying to be super focused on this. It feels goofy to try and describe it while I'm doing it. But now I actually have what looks like a really cute nose. All I have to do now is close it up, and what I tend to do is put it right through the middle. This is the latest method is putting it right through the middle. I'm not sure that's going to be the best method. And in fact, looking at it now, I think what I'm going to do instead was put it right underneath the middle. Pull that all the way through. Yeah, that looks good right there. Do one more on the opposite side of what I just put it in. But I'm going to keep the thread pulled, keep it from going all the way in and right back out. And what I'm going to do here is I'm keeping this on the inside so that I can use that to knot it up. Just got to make sure I get the right strings. If you get the wrong ones, your knot becomes really weird and it just won't hold together. But it looks possible that my thread has looped in on itself. There we go. Okay, which one is, there we have it. Pull tight, and this may catch up. Nope, we're good. It took me so long to figure out something so simple, and I can't even imagine trying to do something more detailed than that yet. Oh no! Did I catch something else? No, I'm good. One of the things I have to make sure I don't do is catch any of the other material on the inside. Now, normally I would use a safety eye, but we are going to be doing the button eyes. So we are to the stuffing part. I'll go ahead and do that, try and do that as quickly as I can. I don't have time to do the suit today. So I have a question for you. Should I save the suit and do that next Wednesday? Work on making the red outfit using this red material and dress our little plush up? Or should I go ahead and do that off camera and just post it and then do something different for next time I do the Weird Wednesday? Does anybody have any preferences? It'll all be trying to figure it out. And just to show you as an example, I've made this tiny hat and I made a cloak, like a wizard hat and cloak for, I'll go ahead and put it on this little guy. But I made it for a mouse. Actually, I have a mouse here. And what happens is I kind of just work on it. I do things, I try drawings, I try to see what works and won't work. I'll hand stitch, I'll machine sew. So what would wind up happening is I would basically just be trying to figure that all out live. I don't know how much fun that would be to watch. Let's see, Vest Online. When you say online, do you mean on live or post it just afterwards online? And honestly speaking, I will do my very best to always do what is requested of me. Within reason, of course. This may not be that kind of site. Live, sorry. No, nothing to be sorry about. I just wanted to make sure I understood, because that's what I thought you meant. That's what I thought you meant, Rosa. Live it is. So next week, that's going to be what I do. I'm going to finish off this mouse today. We're going to sew it all together, get it all stuffed up. And next week, I will have a rough plan and rough estimate. And I'm going to suit him up. Maybe we'll have time to even make a ball or something like that. Maybe I can find like a rubber ball for him to dance on. So next week, we will dress up our little amazing mouse, jumping mouse from the Bobinski Circus. And with luck, that'll come together nicely. I'm still not sure how the legs are going to look here, so I'm going to kind of stuff them a little bit at a time and then make sure that they take the shape that I want. But it does look like it's going to have what I need right there. There's a lot of options for fixing that include like hand sewing. For example, I could hand sew inside the thigh so it brings it in. But my hope is that if I can adjust the pattern just enough, when I sew it together, it'll automatically have that shape. And the reason for that is not like lazy, but definitely easier. Anything that I can do when I machine sew something is just a little bit easier than hand stitching. That being said, there are times when hand stitching has its great benefits. For example, when I put together the cloak here, I put the hood or the collar and the cloak together by hand stitching because I just did not want to try and get right inside here without having to worry about the machine running away on me. So there are a lot of little things that will happen that you can adjust on the fly with when you are hand stitching. Oh, my fuzz just fell on the floor. Let's see if I can do this a little bit quicker. I've gotten to the point where the tiny legs are filled. If you are curious, I have found that it is super easier to fill the smallest parts first, because if you take a wedge of fuzz and you try to like push just a little bit into those small crevices, you can see what's happening. And even if it's like bunched together, you still barely get any movement out of it. So just do a small pinch at a time, and then you can do bigger and bigger as you get to bigger areas. For example, right now I'm doing the thighs, the leg, so I don't have to worry too much about getting into that small foot. I am overfilling the legs just a little bit because I do think that it's going to help give it some shape and pull it forward. But I think that it's not going to be as necessary as it was on the first one I did. Maybe it will. Maybe I still have to do a few more steps. Maybe I have to cut that crease a little bit higher into the belly so that the wedge actually comes up way higher. Because it looks like if I stuff towards the back of the thigh, it'll push it forward more, which is fine, but not exactly how I want this to come together. I don't want someone to have to figure out how to fill it if they get a pattern from me. I want them to be able to just kind of sew stuff and make it as easy and as fun as possible. And little things like that wouldn't bother me to do over and over again, but I can't imagine people being super happy about having to figure things out like that. Looks like I may have missed. Yep, I got some stitches missed right here. So I'm going to have to fix that with some hand stitching. Good thing is you get to see how to fix a seam if you do miss it. It's such a small spot that it's easy to miss some things like that sometimes. Trying to get everything out of the way so that I can work without it being right up next to the camera. Now, one of the things I'm kind of curious about, I don't know if anybody's done this before. On live, there's these different challenges, and the more challenges that I complete, it's about time to get the kid ready for bed. The more challenges I complete, the more it kind of pushes my material, my content out into the ether. One of those things is co-hosting, I think is the word for it, or guests. Does anybody know anything about that? Has anybody had any experience with that? Because I would love to try and do something like that, just kind of get a little bit more out there. So if anybody knows anything about that, please send me a message. I would love to hear the process, kind of maybe figure out a few details about how to get that to work for me. And I'm asking while I'm doing this because I figure this is a good time to kind of ask the filler questions. That should be a good amount of stuff. Now you can see that the leg is kind of the same. It did pull up a little bit more, so it's not extended out as far, and I like that. But now I got to figure out how to get it in more. And I think the next step will just be making the belly right here just a little bit more of a wedge. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. On my belly, I have that little wedge that I sew together to give it some shape. So what I may have to do is bring that just a little bit higher to kind of change the shape of it again. And that's particularly relevant if you are making your own at home. These little ideas to help kind of change the shape of your plush will be little things that you can tack on for all kinds of different stuff. I was worried at first when I made this head that the head was going to be too big. And I had more than a couple of people comment and tell me that they thought it was a good size. And since then, I have grown to really like that size of head, especially since the coraline mice seem to have like a head and body that are the same size. Like no neck, it just flows from one to the other, and it makes it look kind of cute and chunky. When I did my other final version of the mouse, I did the same thing. Kept it a little bit wider. As you can see, it goes a little bit wider than this guy's head does. And I think that that looks a little bit cuter too. Got everything stuffed. Let's go ahead and change out my thread. Looks like we're going to be able to get this finished in time, so that's great. I just have to get enough thread. Of course, I can always get more. Not a big deal. Now, if anybody that's watching this is kind of interested in the idea of sewing for yourself, I'm going to show you a quick and simple way to thread your needle. Once you get your thread through, go ahead and pull and line up the two ends. I'm going to get this to line up. I've got a whole bunch of other thread all over the place, so get your two ends to line up. I'm pretty sure you can see that here. You're going to pinch it, wrap it around your forefinger, and then back inside, and then you just roll it and pull. That's going to be just a real simple little knot. It's the same thing as if you were doing like just a simple little roll and then tie. It's just a little easier to do, and you have so much less thread that you have to worry about dealing with. I'm going to go ahead and sew the body shut. This stitch, as far as I can tell, is referred to as a ladder stitch. Yes, sir? Store?
Hallway.
Oh, you want to be in the hallway because of the storm? Well, maybe later. What I will do is I will put it in the hallway. I'll put your bed in the hallway. And if we need to, we can go to it in the middle of the night if there's any storms, okay?
No.
Well, I can't do it right now, but I will do it as soon as I can, okay? We live in Oklahoma, which is part of Tornado Alley, which means that every so often, especially during this time of year, we have a series of storms that just kind of pummel our area. And sometimes the tornadoes will touch down. Sometimes they will miss us completely. The last couple years, we've had a couple tornadoes that have been really close to us. So what I do is I actually move his little bitty bed into our hallway. And we have that safe space that we can go to where he can sleep if he needs to. And we don't have to worry about anything happening. What are you doing, Vance? Vance, what are you doing?
Noise.
Yes, I know. I hear you making the noise. But why are you doing it? Okay, I need you to stop, please. Vance.
Weird.
What?
Weird.
What?
It's weird.
That's weird? Yes, I know. And what's happening is you're pushing both doors, and it's causing a little bit of suction, so the air is kind of bouncing in and out. All right, I need you to go to mommy, please, okay? Thank you. I never knew that. You never knew what? That I was the Tornado Alley thing, or this ladder stitch, which, I was in the middle of explaining that. By the way, that's what I was going to say a minute ago. The process of closing the stitch is the same thing you might use if you're fixing a plush. You come out and you go directly across from where you came out. Just do a short stitch where you come right back out again, and you pull it tight. You make sure your ends are tucked in, so that when you pull it tight, it just keeps them in place. And you just repeat. It's a very simple little stitch. Now, when you get closer to the end, I like to push it in this way and just hold it in place. And that'll help hide your stitch a little bit better by making sure the ends are all completely inside. See, it just came undone on me right there. And pull tight, and you're good to go. Oh, the rolling it? Yeah, it's a simple little trick. My mom actually taught me that. I do really wish that I had started sewing when my Nana was alive. My mom tells me stories about when she was in high school. I guess they were born in the late 60s, so this would be early 80s. No, that can't be right. Maybe mid to late 70s. But either way, she would go to school. And on her way to school, she would tell my Nana, her mom, that she had a party or had a prom or had a dance that night. And my Nana would make an entire dress knowing her measurements all in one night. Of course, she wasn't supposed to. She wasn't saying that she was proud of neglectfully telling her last second, but she was saying that Nana did so much sewing and was so good at it that she could do something like that in one day and have it ready for that night. And I wish I could have learned some stuff from my Nana. So anytime I learn something from my mom, it feels like a lot of fun too. My mom doesn't do much sewing. She knows how to do some of the important things, fixing a few things and attaching buttons. But she didn't do anything quite like this, and she didn't do any clothes stuff. So anytime she teaches me something, it feels like multiple generations. It's kind of like with my grandpa. My grandpa, her mom, he was my papa. He did a lot of leather work. And unfortunately, just like with that, I did not start learning how to do leather work until after he had passed. And I learned using his tools from my uncle. So his son, my uncle, my mom's brother, all that stuff, taught me how to use my grandpa's tools to sew leather. I've learned how to do a lot of sewing on my own. And my mom's taught me a few things here and there. So there's a lot of like really fun little neat things that have happened along those lines. Now, one thing I'm going to point out is it looks like when I was trying to figure this out, there's a possibility that some of the stitches missed on the end of the tail here. So I'm going to go ahead and just re-secure that. This is the same type of stitch that I just used. The only difference is that it's fixing at a small seam. So I will go directly across again. Try not to get caught on my feet. Do this a little bit tighter because I'm trying to close up right near that tail. And this is really just all about fixing that little spot. I can even feel it securing the tail just a little bit more. I can feel myself also running out of steam. This is about how long it takes for me to run out of steam on this. Talking for over an hour, kind of trying to work in a little bit extra light on the camera, all those little things. They kind of add up slowly. We go ahead and tie this off. I forgot to mention it before. When closing off this stitch, all I do is tie it around the needle itself, pull it tight, and then go right back in where I last came out and come out at a random spot in the body. When I cut the thread this way, the thread is now inside the body and is completely hidden, and you don't have to worry about it coming loose. Now I just got to find my little spot where I had found it coming up. There it is. So here is the hole that I found. It's the same thing. I'm just going to start by coming out. I will back and forth with the ladder stitch, just a tiny little stitch, pulling it tight between, and that will pull the two ends together. And that will close up the spot that I missed. And of course, if I wind up going too far, I could always just backstitch it a little bit. For example, if my stitch is too wide and it didn't actually close anything, which I'm doing a couple times here because I just can't quite tell what's happening. But I think that should close me up pretty well. Sorry, trying to keep it on camera is also a little awkward sometimes. Get this over. Now, I don't think I'm going to have time to do the eyes today. I'm going to get the entirety of the body put together. We're going to be able to see what it looks like. I will do the eyes and the suit next time, and I will try to do that next Wednesday as well. My intention is to do my Weird Wednesdays and not a Poke Monday. So if you have any kind of requests for either one of those options, my ideas are for the Weird Wednesdays are to do something a little bit more gothic, more horror, creepy, nightmare, that kind of stuff, but also still cuddly. I've done more than a few plushes in that same concept. I can't show them because I didn't always take pictures, and it turns out that people love them, so they wind up buying them pretty quick. And here I thought that the coraline mouse would be a really good kind of balance between those, because it's not really horror, but it's just shy. And I feel like that made it a lot of fun to do. Trying to make this head just a little bit wider. So I'm bringing this in. Just got to make sure I don't get caught up on everything as I go. Why, thank you so much, Lee. I'm doing my best to do some fun things, to do some teaching for some of it. I like the idea of people watching me and realizing that they can do certain things really easily without much of a plan, or they can make a full-on plan. Again, this one, I'm going to show you here. This guy started off from my mouse pattern, and I went from this shape to this shape to this shape, here, here. Oops, let's see if I can get them all in the camera at once. All the failures to this. And now we are doing one more that will hopefully be the last step. I do know that there's a couple adjustments I'm going to have to make, but that's a preference thing, not like a die-hard thing. And that's just because I still want the legs to point inward just a little bit more. And I have to find out where exactly to change my pattern so that it fits in to that. Got my head maybe a little bit too wide. I'm going to go ahead and kind of try and tuck this in. What I will do is, let's see what happens when I pull this nice and tight. Yeah, that fixes it. Okay. And so my son is at that phase of I want it. The downside is that I don't give into that easily, but still I want to. But I'm trying to teach him the patience. He likes Pokemon, and that's why I keep doing the different Pokemon. Hey, Vance, oh, never mind. Well, when you get a chance, I have a request of you. I want to get the Venomoth from you. When you're done, don't worry. Thank you. And I can do the eyes on afterwards. So here we go. I think that that's a really good shape. It got a wide head to it. That's fantastic. I've seen the crochet stuff that people can do, and I am super jelly of that. The idea of being able to make a shape as you're stitching it together, as opposed to with me, I have to figure out flat things that make the shapes. I am so very jealous of that. And if you get a chance, do me a favor, send me a message and let me see some of your stuff. I'd love to kind of give a follow back so I can see what happens with that. I like following people that do projects like I do, not just because I know that the algorithm will recognize that, but because it does help get ideas and we kind of get that little community of thought going around. And all I'm trying to do now is just get this head sewn on. Again, this is using that same type of stitch that I used to close the back and to fix the seam. I am literally just going in shallow, right back out, and then directly across. It is super simple. You can do this in a circle. You can do this when you're attaching arms, legs, ears, whatever it is that you have to attach separate. And when you're doing it, you get the option of kind of adjusting how it sets. For example, while I'm doing this, I'm checking to make sure where the head is looking so that I can turn it if I need to. So I want the head to be a little bit more forward so I can pull it tight, bring it back just a little bit, and just sew a little bit farther back on the neck to kind of get that different angle. See? Yes, sir. I love you too. Do I love mommy? I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me. Mommy? Call you? I'm not sure I understand when I should call you. Yeah, I like the way that that's looking there. You don't post yet, but you have for Pokemon, mostly for gifts for my younger brother. You know, first off, shouldn't feel like you have to post, but you know, if you have fun doing it, you might find that you can teach people to have fun doing it too. I started posting some leather work, and one guy happened to see me going through the process and saw that I had such a messy area that he realized that he could just do it anywhere. And it kind of inspired him to start working. And now I kind of watch him on Facebook as well. It's pretty awesome. But I want to make it very clear. If you don't want to post, don't post. There is no reason you should feel obligated to do something like that. But it'll be fun. And if you do, even if you don't, send me a friend request. Let me know so I can follow and kind of see if you do. Now, one of the things I like to do, it's hard to see. Maybe if I turn this light off. Maybe it's a little easier. You can, right in here, where the machine sewed, it catches the fuzz. One of the things that I like to do is pull that fuzz out with my needle, and it makes it feel like this is more of a completed piece. I feel like I put that extra effort in. It looks like right here when I did that, I found some of my stray threads. So let's go ahead and cut those loose as well. I think this final touch kind of adds to the liveliness of a plush because it also really hides where that seam is. It's not perfect, but you could already see it looks way better than it did when the fuzz was trapped inside. It's one of those little steps that I like to do, and I've had a couple of people say that they like to do that to their own plushes because it lets them know that nobody else has messed with them. And I assure you, if anybody ever requested me to not, I would have no problems not doing it. So if you're interested in a plush and a mouse or whatever, let me know. And if you have specifications like that, I am more than happy to take requests. I'm not one of those my way or the highway kind of creators. But you can see it's pulling it all out at that arm. And I'll probably finish the rest of that later. It's one of those things that I will probably do as I finish the head. But you can even see on the seams of the head that it hides those really well when you pull those out. You can see the difference on the sides just a little bit. If I work longer on it, I had a brush somewhere that I was going to try using, but I can't remember where it was. I think it's just a tiny little wire brush. Someone had suggested that, and I think that's a great idea. But see, right there is a subtle difference between the two. So I've got one side with that done and one side without. And I think it really changes the way that it looks. And I'll do the back of the head real quick, and then we'll call that a good night. Sounds like some of those storms may be passing. I haven't heard any thunder or lightning in a little while, but it's been just long enough, and I got to start getting the baby ready for bed. Yes, sir? You pooped and peed? Good job. That's a real good job, buddy. All right. Still got to pull a lot of that fuzz out, but I think the head looks really good. I think the arms and legs look good. There's a subtle difference. I'm not sure if I have a preference between the legs looking more stretched out or curled more. So it's kind of an option. Yeah, with the faux fur, you have to be extra careful though, because some of that will pull right out of the structure as opposed to the seam. So do that very slowly whenever you try that. And I know that because I've made a few things using faux fur. All right, so here's our tail. Let's see, that gives us a nice little tripod shape. I'm going to curve it around in and then back out because I'm pretty sure that's how it looked on the mouse there. And there we go. And it stands really nicely too. Plus you've got, a handle. So you could actually wrap this around something if you wanted to hang it from something. And I still managed to put the loop in here. So let me go ahead and grab something for that real quick. I have a few, but where did they go? I actually have several. Let me go ahead and get some of my mice out of the way here. I'm not the best at organizing my little workspace because what happens is I'll work from one thing to the next and just slide it over. Ah, there they are. All right, let me get my handfuls of stuff out of the way now. Okay, so the key ring, I don't have any fingernails, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. Slide that to the back. And because he's got a lot of weight at his backside, he'll hang really nicely. So you can actually hang him from your clothes, hang him from the mirror, put him on your key ring. You can also have him hang from the tail, and that will come right off. And the loop is so small that you don't really feel it. Let me show you as an example. On another plush, where did I put it? Oh, here it is. So I've got the loop on the back here. It's so small that you really just don't feel it. And I think that's really important to make sure that your plush still feels comfortable. He is a little bit tightly stuffed, but that's okay. I can adjust that in the future. I'll make some changes to the belly so that it comes in. We'll add some button eyes next time. We will use some of my red material here. I've got a whole bunch of this so we can make a suit for him and make a hat. And next time we will try and finish off this Coraline mouse. And then maybe I'll make a rat, because if I remember correctly, the one that the cat bites turns into a rat. And I do make rats. So I think it'd be kind of fun to make a matching jumping mouse and rat together. I really hope you guys had fun. I don't know what the storms are going to be doing, so I'm going to go ahead and head out. Hopefully I don't have to worry too much about the storms taking us away. I really thank you guys ever so much for sticking with me, for helping me out, for interacting. Lee, thank you for coming by. Spaz, Cat B, you guys are great. I want to say Sprocket. That's not right. I cannot remember all of a sudden. I'm trying to do better. I'm working really hard to remember more than just the faces, because I remember the icons for people. But I really appreciate all of your time, and I hope you have a great day. I don't know when I'll be back on live, but I'll try and let you know. See you later.